All right, this is one I've been wanting to do for a long time. It's a comparison or review of the HPI Savage versus Traxxas TMaxx. Obviously 15 years ago or so, these were really popular. They were probably the most popular vehicles you could get, both being nitro, both being four-wheel drive, both being, you know, just the two most popular versions of an 8th scale nitro monster truck, essentially. Obviously, the Traxxas TMaxx kind of changed the game when it came out, and then the Savage, you know, HPI kind of made their own with the HPI Savage, and it has its own cult following along with the TMaxx. So both very popular. I've owned both for a while now. I've actually been more of a Savage person. That was my first nitro, was an HPI Savage, not this exact one, but basically the same thing, 4.6 and all that. And then recently got a TMaxx. I've always been curious about them, so really just wanted to go over kind of pros and cons, just compare them and let you guys know, like, realistically what it really is, in my opinion, the better truck. So let's start with just looks. So I think the actual look of the Savage is better, and one of the main reasons I say that is because of the chassis layout. So it has the twin vertical plates in the center, and I think that really looks a lot like a real monster truck, which obviously those have the tube frames and everything running down the middle. So I think this just looks more like an actual truck, just from that perspective. And personally, I think the bodies, HPI has always done a really good job with their graphics, and I think this body in particular, especially the GT2, the one that came before this, is really probably my personal favorite. But when this one came out, I wasn't super psyched about it, but it's definitely grown on me, and this one's in pretty good shape. Haven't really rolled it very much. So I think in the looks department, I'd have to go HPI Savage. The TMaxx is a little simpler. You can kind of see down there, it does have and ignore that, that's my steering servo arm, but it has a similar kind of thing. It has some braces here in the middle, but it just doesn't have that full, I don't know, kind of frame look. And then the bodies were more rounded. This is actually a Revo body here that I've kind of grafted onto the TMaxx chassis. But you know, I don't know, personal preference obviously, but I think the Savage looks a little better. So with that said, maybe let's take off these bodies and get into kind of like the build quality and how different they are, and ignore that. That's that's what I'm taking out later today to mess with. But so you can see pretty different designs. So starting off with the TMaxx, pretty standard flat plate chassis, and everything's very easy to get to. Steering servo right here, throttle and brake servo, receiver box, receiver battery goes in here, transmission's in the center, and then obviously your engine, your exhaust pipe, everything's just right here, gas tank, and it's very, you can just see everything, right? Very, very easy to kind of get to and understand, whereas you go over to the HPI Savage, and here's that twin vertical plate design. You know, it's very thin compared to, you know, the TMaxx. So just majorly different in design philosophy. Here's your radio box, and if you take this off, you know, I'll talk about this a little more, but steering servo in here, your throttle servo, geez. Steering servo is kind of underneath here, upside down. Transmission in the center, and then obviously engine, exhaust, and your fuel tank. The front and rear clips are pretty easy, I would say, on both of them, but you know, that main chassis is going to be a huge difference maker. And when working on these, you know, going into that a little bit, I would definitely say that the TMaxx is much easier to work on and you know, kind of diagnose than the Savage, and just takes longer to kind of get to things, you know, in the Savage. Like, for instance, I just stripped my spur gear the last time I ran this, and to replace that I have to like move the engine and stuff, and it's just more of a project, whereas on the TMaxx you can actually, it's not the easiest thing in the world. You got to take the gas tank out. It's really easy on both of them. It's really easy, but this is a little easier to get to, a little more accessible, and you don't have to completely remove the motor, which is nice. So a little more kind of lifestyle, easier to live with, I would say, on the TMaxx. Now, as far as durability goes, this is kind of where it starts to get interesting. So TMaxx has been notorious for having, you know, quote unquote poor durability, and the Savage has always been known for having higher durability. And let's wait for this truck to pass. All right. So, and I would say that kind of rings true, and I don't even beat these very hard. I drive these very mildly, but the TMaxx, I've actually snapped an arm, very small piece, but you can kind of see right there. You know, that's broken off. It actually drives fine. It doesn't really affect how it drives, but like that's broken off. And then the reason the steering linkage is all off of it is because I have to replace the servo, because the servo just went out. And this truck is, maybe has 10 tanks. I'll say 15 tanks at most through it, so not very much runtime at all, and the servo's already gone. You know, contrary to that, I've never had a problem with the stock servos on the Savage, other than just being, you know, not the best and kind of slow. They've not like ever stripped out on me or anything. Again, I don't drive it like super hard or like do any crazy jumps and things like that, but I've never had a problem with them. And then also, I've never had a single issue with an upper or lower A-arm on this truck. So that's been great. The drivetrain on the Savage is also pretty much bulletproof, especially with this version of it. I think whenever they went to the single shock, they kind of updated some of the drivetrain to be a little beefier. And on the TMaxx, I've not had any drivetrain issues either, but the drive shafts are actually plastic, and they have these little boots on here that you can see are cracked already just from sitting or whatever, and I think it's just not as durable of a design. Again, I haven't had an issue with them per se, but I can see them being a weak point down the road, whereas with the Savage you have metal outdrives and things, so I've literally never had a single issue with that at all. So durability wise, I definitely have to go with the Savage, but you can definitely, you know, if you want to put RPM on the TMaxx, that pretty much solves all your problems. I haven't had a problem with the bulkheads. Again, I don't drive it like crazy, but I know a lot of people used to have problems with the bulkheads. There's been, you know, many fixes for those. So out of the box durability, definitely Savage gets the win there, but, you know, TMaxx, very upgradable, easier to work on. So, you know, it is what it is. Now as far as power goes, so the Savage has a big block 4.6 in it, and the TMaxx is a small block 3.3. So this definitely feels like, TMaxx feels like it's a little faster than the Savage, just from a top speed perspective. And I think way back in the day when RC Driver or RC Car Magazine, someone tested it, this TMaxx was faster top end than the Savage was. But this, it's definitely easy to tell this is a lot more low end torque, which is really what you want for a monster truck. I'm actually trying to gear that better so it can actually like pop wheelies and stuff, but this one pretty much does it out of the box. So definitely much, you know, good amount more power. I'd say probably about 25 to 30% more power, especially low end on the Savage. So I'd probably have to give the overall power to HPI on that one. But as far as tuning and ease of use goes, I think actually that's where the TMaxx takes the cake. This has been much more drivable, easier to get started and kind of keep going, you know, in most of my experience. And it's, you know, 3.3 has been a pretty reliable and friendly engine to me. Now, I have had one issue, and it hasn't been with this truck, but I have a 3.3 Jatto, and I'm pretty sure, I don't know because I haven't opened it up, but I'm pretty sure I threw a connecting rod on that. So that is unfortunate. I've never had that problem with a F4.6 Nitro Star engine from HPI. I think they're made by Force, but you know what I mean. These engines have always been pretty reliable and powerful. So yeah, that is something on the 3.3. I think the connecting rod on my Jatto went out, but on this particular truck, it's been great. And my stepbrother has a Jatto as well, and I think that engine's fine. So it could just be a fluke thing on my personal Jatto, but something to note. But yeah, I think the 3.3, you know, holds a tune really well, and I mean, you can just drive it all day. It's awesome. This is a little more on the tuning side. I think it's a little more finicky, but maybe I just suck with tuning. I'm not really sure. But yeah, I'd have to give tuning and whatnot to the Traxxas. And going from there to just handling characteristics, this is really where I think the biggest difference between these two trucks comes. And really, the Savage is like driving a really high-centered or like very, you know, off-balance kind of vehicle, whereas the TMaxx is pretty much driving an F1 car compared to this. It's just kind of night and day. The braking on this is way better. The turn-in is much better. I think it's a little better in the air. It's just a little lighter and it's slightly easier to control. This thing just, for better or worse, it just drives like an absolute tank. And that's fun sometimes, but when you live where I live and you don't have a lot of access to like a quarry or something like that, where you can just like rip through some dirt, if you're more on like streets or grass, the TMaxx definitely handles a lot better. I don't know, I think it might sit a little lower. They're pretty even. Obviously, you can easily adjust that by just taking out some of these clips on the shocks, and that would lower it down a little more even there. But even still, even if you do that to the Savage, the TMaxx is gonna outhandle it, in my opinion, all day. And I even have the, which is a very nice option, by the way, the HPI sway bar set on here, which does help for sure. But I think really, you just can't beat, for these monster trucks, obviously, you know, you can't beat the handling of the TMaxx. It's just a nimbler truck, really. And as far as size goes, you know, obviously they're pretty comparable. They call the Savage an 8th scale, and they call the TMaxx 10th. And the other thing, it's kind of nice, really quick, is like the little handle here on the Savage. You just kind of pick it up. This one, you gotta kind of move it around. It takes a couple more steps, but so I'll just show you the wheelbase here. Basically the same. The Savage has little larger wheels. These are 14mm hex. Those on the Savage are 17mm hex. You can get a 17mm conversion for this, which I have. I just haven't put it on yet, but then I could run the same wheels on both, which would be kind of nice. But yeah, pretty much the same size. I think the Savage, you know, a little bit taller. It's tough to see on camera, but it is a little taller than the. Yeah, I mean, you can't even see the TMaxx over here. So yeah, it's ever so slightly taller and maybe, you know, maybe a hair longer, but they're pretty much the same size. But and there, you know, here you can really see the chassis difference between them and how they're built. So in my personal opinion, again, I've owned one of these since I was like, you know, early teens, so pretty long time, and I just got one of these a couple years ago. But if I had to pick just one to have a nitro truck, I would definitely pick the TMaxx, for all the reasons I listed. And driving it, it's just a better, more fun driving experience. It handles a lot better. It's easier to work on. You know, yes, the steering servo went out. That's kind of a pain in the butt. And, you know, that arm is slightly broken, but it doesn't mess with how the truck drives. And it just drives way better. The brakes are so much better. It just handles night and day compared to this. This is like, again, like I said, it's like driving a tank, and this is like driving a 10th scale on-road car in comparison. So I would definitely go with the TMaxx. Obviously, parts availability is way better with this. You can definitely find parts for this, but HPI has gone through a lot in the last few years, and so it can be more difficult to find parts for the Savage, whereas the TMaxx, it's a Traxxas, so you're always going to be able to find parts for it pretty much. So yeah, I would definitely give the win overall. If I had to just have one, I'd probably just stick with the TMaxx, and it kind of pains me to say that because I love my Savage and the ones I had in the past. But this, I really do think it's just it's in some ways it's a simpler design, and again, it's the driving characteristics of it are a lot more forgiving, a lot easier to pick up. So, you know, that's my opinion on it at the end of the video. The one last thing I do want to mention, however, is the advantage of the Savage in the chassis category, and I forgot to mention earlier, is actually the radio box setup. What's nice about the Savage is everything's right here. You put your battery in here, you plug it in, and then this cover goes over everything, you know, under the air filter there, and it's all kind of in one place, which is really nice. This here on the TMaxx is kind of a pain because you have your receiver here, and then you have like just exposed wires, and then your battery is like shoved in here, and you know, sometimes it's kind of finicky you can't fit it all the way. I actually had to cut some out to put the extra wire and kind of like zip tie it like around this area when I drive it. I mean, it's just, I think it could have been done better. Again, they have the space, you know, as a flat chassis, so I feel like they could have maybe designed it a little better there. So I do think the Savage has the advantage when it comes to like the radio box and stuff like that, but overall, as far as ease of maintenance, still give that to the TMaxx. So yeah, that is my opinion on it. That is the sad conclusion that I've come to, is this is the better truck, and especially right now, because these used to be like $450, $500 for years and years and years, and now they're, I think, like $650 or something, and this is still about $480 for the 3.3. So another just price, another reason to go with the Traxxas. You have the support, you have the aftermarket support, you have the handling, you have the ease of use, you know, ease of starting as well, although that's kind of a wash. This has the roto start, and this has the easy start. I've actually pulled that off and put a pull start on it, which was stupid because now it's way harder. But I was going for like a lighter kind of truck. But usually, you know, out of the box, this is probably, it's close, but this is probably a little easier to get going. You know, this is not quite as intuitive. But yeah, that's it. So hope you guys enjoy that. I've been wanting to do this video for a long time. I would like to get some running footage of these as well. But yeah, if you're in the market, I mean, you're probably not because no one is anymore. But if you're in the market for a 8th scale nitro truck, your first one, I would go with this guy. If it's not your first one and you already have one of these, or you have something else and you're looking for something different, maybe something that looks a little cooler, maybe a little more realistic, you know, can't go wrong with the Savage. But yeah, if I had to pick one, it's got to be the TMaxx. So hope you enjoyed that, maybe learned something, gave you something to think about, and I'll catch you later on.